I know that you're recently back from a trip to Northern Ireland. You led a delegation with a couple dozen executives on that trip. Joe Biden, when he made his trip to Northern Ireland earlier this year, and I think it was back in April, which I find hard to believe now, marking the anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, talked about the impact of diplomacy here, sustained diplomacy. And I wonder what the economic answer is to that diplomacy.
So, Joe and Kayleigh, first off, just thanks for having me. Thanks for your interest, and appreciate the opportunity. Being with President Biden in Belfast, now back in April, was an extraordinary moment because it was an opportunity to celebrate not just the people of Northern Ireland, but what partnerships can in fact do and how they can help transform communities. Northern Ireland has come a very long way in a very short period of time when you look at that trajectory over the course of the last 25 years and even longer, candidly. And the opportunities that are there before them at the moment are quite extraordinary. And the opportunities that the United States and the 230 businesses that are doing already, American businesses that are doing business there, the impact that they have had across their society is quite stunning. And so all of this, I think, builds in a unique moment and unique opportunities that Northern Ireland has at this moment to work alongside the United States in some of our strategic interests.
When do you think U.S. businesses are actually going to more firmly seize that opportunity, though? Where did the real investment dollars show up in a more material way?
Oh, I mean, Kayleigh, when we were over there just 2 weeks ago or so, the comptroller for the state of New York announced $50 million in investment, further investment. He'd already put in over $60 million into Northern Ireland over the course of the past several years. So he doubled down, announced $50 million more. Coca-Cola announced a $20 million expansion for a bottling line in Northern Ireland, which has been one of their key facilities, employing a couple dozen more people. But look, I think one of the biggest challenges, candidly, that Northern Ireland faces isn't from some of the investment opportunity. It's actually from the perception that a number of Americans have about when you say Belfast or you say Northern Ireland, what comes to mind? And one of the big objectives, what President Biden asked me to do, was to say, hey, take some of these business leaders, walk them through downtown Belfast, walk them through the safest city of its size in the entire United Kingdom, walk them through the happiest part of the United Kingdom, walk them through the communities where if you have a college degree, the unemployment rate is essentially zero, where Citigroup has nearly 4,000 employees, PwC has nearly 4,000 employees. Let them see the enormous gains that have been made here, hard-earned and hard-won by the people of Northern Ireland, with support from their friends and support of businesses like Liberty Mutual, which at that time was headed by a Belfast native, Ted Kelly, after the Good Friday Agreement, that was a critical investor and friend alongside some of these businesses to help spread that, as it's called, a peace dividend, more broadly across society. And that's what the president's asked me to do. But it's coming. And it was, I think, an extraordinary moment for us and our delegation to see that, sense it, and look at the opportunities provided by this new agreement in tribute to the British government and the Windsor framework to actually incentivize Northern Ireland as a potential place for investment to all of Europe.
Well, it sounds like a successful trip, Congressman. I'm guessing that you wouldn't mind taking a couple of your former colleagues on Capitol Hill for a walk right now. The level of discord that we're seeing, I'd love to ask you about, but I wonder if it actually impacts deal making abroad, commitments from other countries when they see a legislature that sometimes lately does not function.
Joe, look, I talk to my old colleagues there almost every day. It's hard. It's raw, as you saw today, and you see most days. You can sense the feeling from a number of folks of, despite the best intentions of some that are really trying on both sides of the aisle and across both sides of the Capitol that are trying to find ways to make the place work, that there's forces there that are really set on making sure it doesn't. And, you know, democracy is hard. It's easier to break than make work. But it does mean that we all share a responsibility in trying to make this work. And, you know, I think without question, it makes it more difficult. That being said, you know, markets had a good day today. And this is something that we all still need to work pretty hard to make sure that the United States, you know, politically, economically, legally, just the structural frameworks here remain sound so that we can continue to benefit from it.
Well, sir, you say that democracy is hard, and maybe other democracies like the one you are working closely with know that and can recognize it. But those countries that aren't led in a democratic fashion may say, well, why would we want that? And I wonder if the real issue for the U.S. in terms of perception abroad is with some of those other countries, like, say, I don't know, China, as President Biden is getting set to meet with Xi Jinping tomorrow.
Well, you've also seen, Kaylee, and it's a good question, right? You've seen perceptions of Chinese, according to recent polling, of the United States has actually increased markedly over the course of the past several months. And, you know, I hesitate to wholly put, too much credit in polling where, media isn't as free and open as it is here in the United States. And when you think of the ability of government to make decisions for its people, yeah, certainly those people making decisions think that autocracies might be better. Turn around and ask some of the other folks that are on the other side of those decisions how they feel about living in an authoritarian system rather than one that is open, free, and responsive. And look, we've got major structural issues in our democracy that we need to work on and we need to invest in, and that haven't gotten the attention that I think, candidly, I think some of us have taken for granted, that we didn't need to invest in these structures of democracy because we just figured that they were settled. Democracy is never settled. It is continually earned. And we as a society, I don't care where you all fall on that political spectrum, have to invest in it. And when you don't, there's consequences.
Well, I know that you've been busy in your own way with the Groundwork Project, helping to organize folks around the country separate from your duties with the State Department here. Congressman, I wonder, you and I have been talking for a long time, since before you served in Congress. I wonder if you're just glad to not be in the middle of it right now, or if you'd like to come here and knock some heads together.
Joe, as you know, I've got a young family. It's been nice to spend some additional time with them. And candidly, when you have a chance to, when I talk to my colleagues that are still sitting in office and who are working very hard to try to make the system work, but can feel it blocked, right, by forces beyond their control. A couple of good friends announced their retirement this past weekend, saying, it essentially isn't worth it anymore. And while I understand that decision on a personal basis for them, I ache for our country because these positions are critically important to making the basic features of our nation work and of democracy work. And whether people understand it wholly or not, people around the world do look to the United States to be a place where government works, where people try to stand up and do the right thing. And when you've got some of the highlights that you're seeing coming out of the Capitol and out of our democracy in recent days and weeks and months, that can be harder to do. But without question, it matters. There's still good people there, and good people on both sides of the aisle, and again, on both sides of the Capitol. But this takes work, and this takes effort, and for all of us, that isn't just going to happen because you want it to. You gotta put some muscle into it.
Yeah, so you are in communication, as you say, frequently with your colleagues who still are in Congress. What about the communication you're having in your role now? You're trying to convince businesses that operate in the U.S. to also invest in Northern Ireland. But when you're having conversations with those business leaders, what are they telling you about how they view the political environment?
So that was part of the benefit of taking this group, over 50 business leaders, over to Northern Ireland, was for them to get a sense of what it was like over there, and to see it for themselves, and not just read about it or experience it, or candidly hear what their parents or what other people might have thought about it, because people transit through Dublin frequently or London frequently, but haven't made that trip up to Belfast, or haven't gone to a border region like Newry, or haven't quite visited a city like Derry that has walls dating 4 centuries ago. But if you go to Derry, you'll also find out that Seagate, one of the world's leading manufacturers of hard drives, has had a facility there for decades. When you go to Belfast and find out it's the #1 destination for cybersecurity investment in all of Europe, right? They're surprised. You go to Newry and you see that it's home to a $1 billion financial services firm in First Derivative. There's an extraordinary story to tell. And while you can look back on these times of the troubles and the history of Northern Ireland and say, gosh, they've got a long way to go, I kind of turn that around and say, look how far you've come, right? Look at what the United States did in our founding, right? We wrote a constitution, we threw it out. About a dozen years later, we wrote a new one. We still didn't recognize women as people or anybody other than a white Protestant man, a rich white Protestant man, as having any sort of stature in our society. We fought a civil war and are still wrestling with the remnants of it. And so to turn back around and say, for Northern Ireland, that was in some aspect of conflict for literally hundreds of years, to see that they've come this far in 25 is nothing short of extraordinary. They've done the hard part. There's an opportunity here for precision manufacturers, medical device companies, pharmaceutical companies, financial services companies that are looking for an opportunity, a landing pad to invest in Europe and gain access to Europe and gain access not just to the EU, but the UK. Northern Ireland is the only region in the world that will have unfettered market access to both those areas. And so there's a real opportunity going forward for companies that are aware of it, willing to invest in it, and put some time in, and I think they'll reap the rewards from it.
Joe Kennedy, the former Congressman, U.S. Special Envoy to Northern Ireland for Economic Affairs, we thank you for the long view and your perspective today. I hope your family is well.